Our top story of the hour, we start in the Middle East, and protests over Iran's worsening economy have expanded from Tehran to rural provinces, leaving at least 7 people dead, including protesters and a Basij volunteer. US President Donald Trump has issued a sharp warning to Iran, saying the United States would intervene if Iranian authorities violently suppress peaceful protesters. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said the US was locked and loaded and ready to go if Iran shoots and kills demonstrators. His comments come as Iran faces its largest protests in 3 years. Joining us now to discuss this is Sasha Machta, a political commentator. He joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for joining us. Sasha, of course, Trump is promising that the US will come to their rescue if Iran cracks down. Realistically, what do you think that means? A military threat, sanctions, or just simple words coming from the US president?
Of course, this begins with simple words, but words of this type are never really that simple. He is actually the first major world leader that is making a statement on the situation in Iran. European leaders have not really commented on the situation, but Trump coming out and backing the protesters is exactly the kind of fuel that the Iranian resistance and the Iranian people want and expected in their struggle against the Iranian regime that has actually kept them oppressed and under strict and harsh Islamic rule for years, for decades. So a statement of this type, at first, it is only a backing, but a backing could be exactly what these protesters and what this opposition needs to actually and hopefully be able to start a process of toppling the regime. We saw that these protests started as more economic related topics. They started protesting the fall and the collapse of the rial, the water situation, of course, with the severe droughts in Iran, but then we heard that it moved on to chants of death to the dictator and calls against the mullahs. So this is a huge, huge escalation in Iran. I remind you that, and the viewers, that this is not just a simple protest as we have the privilege to see in democratic countries where we both are from, but this is actually people that are going out risking their lives, knowing that being at a protest could actually cost them their lives. And the fact that the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, is coming out with a statement of this type and a threat to Iran is very, very significant. I don't know exactly how Trump is going to react, but it is a big and strong threat. But there's a fine line that Donald Trump has to balance, as well as Israel, in regards to making statements and taking action supporting the opposition, because the Iranian regime could try and seek to reframe this as a US or Israeli Zionist plot to expel the regime and shift the focus from the domestic problems and for the chaos and collapse that they've brought their country to. Instead of that, shifted to external enemies. So this is a fine line, and it appears that Trump is backing the opposition, and I would not be surprised if action was taken.
Indeed, and Sasha, we're just getting some update in, and a senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader has said that US interference in Iranian protests would lead to chaos across the region. Iran has ignored international pressure before. Why would anything be different this time? And of course, I'd just like to reiterate to our viewers that as far as we do know, these protests are still concerned and are still headed and wired towards the economic situation in Iran. We've got no confirmed updates of anything other motives yet. But Sasha, what would make this situation different to Iran's response?
We're under some unique conditions that have never actually occurred in past protest movements. We had student movements, we had the Green Movement, and in the past, the brave Iranian people have tried to rise up against this brutal regime, but have always failed in gathering the international support and the actual backing of the West and Western leaders. So this time, Israel and the US, the 12-day war, actually created unique conditions where the Iranian regime is very weak, very vulnerable as well. Their whole air defense system was totally taken down by Israel in the first days with the surprise attack in the 12-day war, and of course with the US bombing Fordo with the B-2 bunker busters. So this created a unique condition where the Iranian regime was not just isolated from their proxies, who had
Mm.
also been slowly knocked down, but also hit themselves and very, very beaten by the US and by Israel. So now these protests come in the wake of that. These protests are a reaction and a natural consequence of the action that Israel took in Iran. The Iranian people now feel that the regime is so weak, and the regime is so weak because of these actions that were taken, because of the 12-day war, but also because of the decline of the rial, because the Iranian regime has spent years ignoring their own domestic priorities rather than and creating a useless and quite unnecessary enemy in Israel and in the US and the whole West instead of actually focusing on the prosperity of their people. So now these two combinations of the
Mm.
mist and the end of the war, but also the economic uncertainty and chaos is creating a vacuum where if the Iranian resistance movements are able to come together with the international backing and with the support of Donald Trump, it could create a new chain that could hopefully ultimately lead to the weakening and fall of the regime.
Okay, Sasha, do stay with us, of course. Here on NewsX World, we'll continue to follow that developing situation in Iran and bring you all the information that we can. Okay, we move over to Yemen next, and the eastern Hadramaut